What's up, guys? You might remember the Battle Royale series I uploaded just a few days ago, and we learned how to just start scrolling our Battle Royale game. And today what we're gonna do is start making our enemies. And we're gonna get our enemies AI properly today. Well, maybe not enough time because it's actually pretty long, so we should get started fast. And so let's get started right away. So let's first go ahead and duplicate our player because we do want same costume, and we're gonna name it enemy because we'll want to know that it is the enemy. We're actually gonna make it a little bit dark. So now if you see, we can see which one's enemy and which one's our character. So this one's our character, which we can move around with. And if you see, this enemy is under our player. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this. You know what? Let's first take this out, and then we're gonna take this out. We're gonna take. Let's just delete all of that. Let's edit this. We're gonna name it enemy movement, and press OK. For the setup, what we're gonna do is go to front layer, and we're gonna make two lists. We're gonna use lots of lists today, and one of them is enemy X for all sprites, enemy Y for all sprites, and that is obviously for containing the position of our enemies, so they could locate where the enemies are. And then obviously we're going to use clones because we don't want so many sprites. So we're going to use clones. We're going to get clone ID, which you guys might know for the sprite only because we want it to be a clone variable. Let's click OK. So clone X for the sprite only. And then obviously what you want to do is clone Y for the sprite only. Now that you have the most simplest variables, we're actually going to make the other ones later. And then what you're going to do is set clone ID to 0. And then you're going to go to control, get a repeat loop, and you're going to input how many enemies you want. I'm going to input 5 because I'm just going to show you how to do it. I'm not going to make it like an entire actual battle royale, so because 100 will lag out, you will have to use a different method, which is a method where you create the clone only if the enemy X and enemy Y contains the value that is on screen, or if it's off screen, it's not going to be cloned and not shown. Just updating the values, which is pretty hard to get it, but if you do, that's a big thing because that's going to lag out your game like it's not going to lag out your game, like it's going to be running so much faster. Anyways, let's get that change clone ID by 1, and then we're going to get set enemy X, so clone X and clone Y to let's actually pick a value. Let's pick value somewhere around -200 and 200 because we don't want it so far from us. The map is extremely big. And yes. And again, if you haven't watched the part 1, go ahead and watch it. There's going to be a link in the description below. Also, if you press the I button up here, you will be able to watch it. Now what you're going to do is go to variables, drag just a little bit down, you'll get the lists. You're going to get add clone X to enemy X and clone Y to enemy Y. And it's actually a little bit confusing when we say clone X, clone Y. And what you could do is change it to enemy X or something else. I'm changing to enemy X because the list says it's enemy X and enemy Y. So like it's gonna be a little bit less confusing. So, and I'm gonna create clone of myself, and then here's one of the tricky parts. We're gonna get set clone ID to P, which represents parents. Which means that it is not a clone, it is a parent. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna get you know what, we're gonna leave that there. We're gonna just get all of those out because we don't want to move when we press something. We're gonna change this to enemy Y, enemy Y, enemy X, and enemy X. Of course, we don't want these enemies to change the scroll X or scroll Y of the game, so let's take that out. And we're gonna change this to go to enemy X minus scroll X, enemy Y minus scroll Y, and obviously you want to take this out. And the rest will be kept the same. Now the next thing what we're gonna do is we're gonna get when I receive player movement, we're gonna use the same broadcasting because it's a movement broadcasting. It's gonna be fine. Or if you don't like that, what you could do is get forever events broadcast tick and wait until the tick broadcasted thing is done. So, and what you're gonna do is when I receive setup forever broadcast tick and wait. Let's go back to enemies and let's get that tick. And what we're gonna do next is we're gonna go to control if else, and if not equals clone ID is P, which means parents. We're gonna move. Else, let's go ahead and hide. We don't need it. Now, the next thing what we're gonna do is, I guess we're gonna code on with the tick. And with the tick, what we're gonna do is we're gonna get my blocks, make a block, find target. So run without screen refresh. What this block is gonna do is what it says. It's gonna find a target. You're gonna drag this in before it moves. So right there, yeah. And then let's see. So we're gonna code with this now. And this is where the hard part comes in, all those math. Because to actually get the distance, calculate which one's the shortest, we gotta do some math. Now let's make our variables. And the first one is gonna be distance to target. Now, if you wanna know what that means, it means it's gonna calculate, get one, and the getting value is going to be the distance to our target. So this, like, it's the distance to our target. Now, yeah, I think you can get it. Distance to target. And we don't only have a target distance, but what we do need is target direction for this target direction right there. So for the sprite only, and I think that's good. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is set distance to target to underscore when find target is run. Now, what underscore will represent here is a blank. And why underscore is a blank, not a blank is a blank, is because we need the blank to be the highest value that exists in Scratch. Now, if you want to know why the underscore is the greatest value, if you get an underscore versus any number, so 123 is greater than underscore, no way, it is false. Underscore, or even letters, so right there, even letters are greater than any number values in Scratch. So that's why a underscore represents the blank, which has to be the highest value. And then we're gonna get two calculation variables, and it's gonna be I1 and I2. Or you can use a different letter like A, B, C, anything. I is one of my favorite to use, so I choose I. Let's set I1 and I2 to 0 when find target is triggered. Now the next thing we're gonna do is repeat like repeat length of enemy X, which means number of existing enemies. And reason why I don't put -1, I can tell you later. And if you don't know why we should have put a -1 in a normal way, is because length of enemy X will contain itself X, which don't count as an enemy. But we're gonna keep it like this because of one more thing. And one more thing, before we get to it, we're gonna get a change I1 by 1 in there. And then we're gonna go to control an if-else statement. And we're gonna get an equal sign right there. So that's really good. And let's get clone ID equals I1. Now here's the thing. If we weren't to have this, what we would have is a block. Now what that block is gonna be is distance to X. And we're gonna have a number input of X, Y, a number input of Y. And run without screen refresh, you always have to remember. Let's get that. What I'm actually gonna do is change these to non-capital letters because that actually makes me confusing. So that's really nice. And we're gonna get distance to in here. And we're gonna do item I1 of enemy X and I1 of enemy Y. Now, basically, if you don't understand what we're doing in here, is we're going one by one, checking everything in enemy X's list and enemy Y's list. But here's the thing. What if I1 equals my clone ID? What if it's representing my position? Which means that'll obviously be the closest because it's 0 pixel away. But we don't want that. We don't want to check our distance and just stay in a spot. And with that left spot, what we'll want to do is go ahead and check our player's position. We don't want to leave our player out, so we do want to target our player. Now, if you put that in, let's drag that into else. And then we're going to get one more of this and drag in our player X and player Y. And that is why we needed our player X and player Y to be for all sprites variable. We need to use it in enemies. Now the next thing we're going to do is go to control, get an if-else statement, and then we're going to duplicate this. And if I2 equals clone ID, now reason why I'm not using I1 is you'll get to know it. Because we're gonna set our I2 to I1 in this block. And then what we're gonna do is get another block. And that is gonna be point towards. Now we got the distance, we chose which one is the closest, we're gonna go there. But to go there, we want to point in that direction. So let's go ahead, point towards X, X, Y, Y, and run without screen refresh. Now you want to leave that there for now. Let's get a point towards, so 2 of them. And the first one is going to be player X and player Y. Item, you can just duplicate both of those, but change this to I2 of enemy X and enemy Y. So that's pretty cool. And before we move on, we're going to code these 2 codes. And we're actually going to code distance 2 first. Now, how we're going to do distance 2 is really just simple. So here, let's say we have our player right here. No, I mean, let's say here is our enemy, which is calculating the distance to enemy here, player here, and everything. And basically how we're going to calculate it is really, really simple. We're going to have to get this line, like that's the distance. What we're going to do is draw a triangle right there. Now, how we're going to get the distance is we're going to get this side. So we have this side, let's call it A, and we have this side, that is B. We have this side, that is X, which represents the value we want to know. Now, A squared and B squared will equal X squared. So that's pretty nice. So that's how we get the distance. B squared plus A squared will equal X squared. So let's move on. And to get that, we're gonna go to control, get an if statement. And what we're gonna do is go to operators, get this one. So if it's less than. And what we're going to do is distance to target. Now, here's why we wanted to set our distance to target to underscore, which is a biggest value, which our new calculated value is less than our last calculated value. It's going to replace it, which means if it was an underscore, it'll replace it any way. So, yeah, that's why we need it. And then let's go to operators. Let's get this block. And let's get square root right here. Let's drag that in. And what we're going to do is add our minus enemy X and X. Now, if you don't know what that is, then it's just getting the actual value. Oh, we don't want to do that. What we'll want to do is get it times that 2. Or what you could really do also is get one of these, square root it, and just get this in. That's what it is. We can do that. Let's get that here. And let's duplicate it. Let's get this a Y, this to be enemy Y. Let's add those together, and let's square root it again. So that's pretty nice. And that's what the formula is. Let's go ahead and set our distance to target to this value when the conditions are met, which means that this value, our new square rooted value, is less than our original distance to target. So let's reset it to our new calculated value, and let's go ahead and set I2 to I1, which will be used in the point towards. And for our point towards, it's pretty much the similar code, but just a little bit different. Because it does have a different formula. So let's get target direction, and let's round it up because we don't want any decimal values. Or what you could do is get around here too. So like that. Let's round up something like a plus times 180. And we'll fill up the back part later. What we're gonna do is get one of these, and let's get 8A10. So right there. And you're gonna drag that in, and you're gonna get a divided by. And then you're gonna get 2 minus, subtract, and get minus, like the Y and the X right there. And then like this, you're gonna actually duplicate that, put that right over here, and duplicate that, and put that right over here. So we're gonna drag that in. And then here's a trick you might want to know. You can drag these in here, which is pretty nice. You're gonna get the Y, and then you're gonna duplicate the enemy Y, and you're gonna drag that in. Pretty nice. And then, so that's how you get the target direction. But here's the thing. If we were to do it this way, we will get some crazy values sometime. Like the value goes over 200. And what we'll actually want is some smaller values like -80 to 180, not 0 to 360. So here's what we'll want to do about that. We're going to go to operators, get a subtraction, and we'll use simple, almost the same trick as this. So you can actually just duplicate that, drag that in. And then you can just throw that out because we don't need it, and you'll actually just replace this, like the enemy Y that was here, with 2 here. And you're gonna change this to target direction because we're targeting to actually do it. And what you could do is put a 360 there and a -180 here. And then what you'll want to do is to duplicate that. And then you'll get a like a 160 here. You'll just leave it like that. No, 360, I'm sorry. And then what we could do next is move it over back and 180. So that was pretty nice. That's how you do it, right there. Now let's go back up to our find target because we're not finished with it just yet. No, we're not. And then what we'll actually do next is getting our actual target values. Now that is another variable. Enemy X, or that'll be the same thing. So let's get enemy target X for the sprite only. And let's actually copy that and get it right there, and enemy target Y for the sprite only. You have to get them both for the sprite only because it is going to be a clone variable. A clone variable. You're going to if else statement, and you're going to duplicate this, and you're going to put that right in there. You're going to go ahead set our enemy X. Oh no, not the enemy X, but the enemy target X. And enemy target Y to a value. You're actually going to duplicate that right there. And you'll get a plus pick random -200 and 200. And the reason why we're adding those things is because it's a gunfight. We don't want to stick to them. Our goal is to get near them to shoot the guns. So you kind of get that. So let's get player X. Player X and player Y for our ifs, and for the else's, we're gonna have to duplicate enemy X and duplicate that enemy Y right there. Now that's pretty much it. But when we do this, it's not gonna refresh. It's just gonna keep the target as it is, even though some targets are getting closer to them. So now what you'll want to do is get this refresh system. Now what this refresh thing is going to be is if enemy target X is equals an underscore. And in the else, what we're going to do is if equals pick random 1 to 50 is equals 50. We're going to set enemy target X to an underscore. Now that'll refresh it. So that's pretty nice. That is how we get the enemy's positions. Now what we'll want to do is code that. So let's actually go ahead and start designing our replacements first. Replace item enemy X and enemy Y with our enemy X and enemy Y, and the item clone ID of enemy X and enemy Y. What that'll basically mean is it's going to refresh its position for the other enemies to know where they actually are, or because we don't want to go where they was, we want to go where they are. So that's pretty nice. And let's get divide and minus. Let's go to motion, get the direction, get it right there. Divide it 5, and enemy target direction right there. And you're gonna actually drag that right like that. And then here's the next part. We're gonna get this less than. If enemy Y is less than enemy target Y, we're gonna do that. You're gonna duplicate that. You're actually gonna switch those up. And if enemy target Y is smaller than enemy Y, we're gonna do that. And you're gonna duplicate that and change that to enemy X and enemy target X. We're gonna drag that in here. And then, oh no, here. So we're gonna duplicate that, switch those up again, and drag that in here. Now, if we go, they start moving around, pointing at each other. They're actually kind of going that way because everyone is trying to move that way. That is actually just depends really on the thing. Now, if you see you'll see them pointing at each other. Now, if I go, they'll do fine. So you see them pointing at the closest ones. So if I go closer to them, you see this dude, well, he was, yeah. So they will point like that. But it actually kind of seems like they're not pointing at me, which is a problem. And, let's see. Distance to player X and player Y. So that's a problem. But it actually does work well. And we do have a few things we forgot is we have to actually reset the values when the game starts. So let's get set enemy distance to target, enemy target direction to an underscore right there. And then we'll drag these in before it creates a clone. And we will set enemy target X and target Y to an underscore when the game starts. Right there. So actually that's pretty nice. Let's try to run it again. Where are they? So what we're actually gonna have to add again is a show right over here. So that's nice. If I go close to them, they will point at me. If I go far from them, they will point at other things. They will eventually try to target the closest ones to them. So if I go here, he's pointing at me. He'll point at me. He's refreshing his position. And he's actually aiming at different one. That's kind of strange, but yeah, that's actually how you make this cool AIs. They will be able to shoot each other. They will be able to shoot you still, and they will keep on refreshing their positions, trying to like do those cool things. You see them pointing at me and all those stuff. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think that is going to be it for this episode. And I'll be back with another cool tutorial, so remember to hit that subscribe button and the like button. Remember to check my studio out. There's going to be a link in the description below. Hit that follow button too, and see you in another piece of tutorial, and peace.